Welcome to Season 5 of the Becoming Trauma-Informed podcast. I'm Dr. Lee, your host for the past 4 seasons, and I am delighted to announce the addition of a very special co-host, my husband and business partner, TLC.
To become trauma-informed is to understand how trauma occurs, why it happens, and how to respond in a way that leads to repair and reconnection instead of further pain and harm. One of the biggest causes and effects of trauma is history literally repeating itself. Whether it's toxic patterns passed from parent to child, repetitive wars, political discord, or simply the habits we keep participating in despite our best efforts, patterns are evident everywhere we look. One thing is clear. If our past painful experiences aren't discussed and processed, the harm doesn't just continue to affect us. It seeps into our relationships, our work, and perpetuates damage into our future.
On this season of the podcast, TLC and I will be discussing some of the most notable historical events in humanity and exploring what the past can teach us about the present, plus the potential impact on our future. We'll also be deep diving into popular trends and current events, exploring them from an intersectional and nuanced perspective. We'll focus less on finding the right answer and more on sparking curiosity and conversation. We're not going to sugarcoat it. The topics we broach will be activating, and the discussion will likely get passionate. We're leaving no stone unturned and publicly exploring the questions that most people dare not to even speak aloud. So if you're looking to learn more about trauma, to understand your own experiences deeper, or to dive into some slightly taboo conversations, we're excited you're here.
Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm really excited. TLC is here with me.
Yes. Hi.
And we have one of our favorite humans with us, the lovely Brittany Bowman. For those of you who don't know Brittany, she is one of our key team members at the Institute for Trauma. In fact, if you ever send us an email, like 97% of the time, Brittany's the one emailing you back. If you get an email that says Team ITPS, Brittany probably sent it. So she's also one of the main ways that people get to connect with us in our programs, our more intensive and like higher level programs. And so she's such a beautiful soul and a really great part of our organization. And we have her on today because we're going to talk about some things. I teased this last week. We're not going to spill tea. We're just going to talk through something that we see, all three of us see, that is really pervasive in the business program, training, mentorship, coaching space. And that is like a perpetuation of harm, re-traumatization. So I'm excited for our conversation today. And so in addition to Brittany working with us at the Institute, Brittany also has her own business. And what is hilarious is that she's really good at what she does, y'all. Just shameless plug. She's really good at what she does. And she helps with strategy around creating clarity and simplicity and removing the clutter mentally, emotionally, physically from your life so that there's more space and it feels good and it's more functional. And so TLC, do you want to share that story about what actually prompted this episode?
Oh, yeah. So I was actually in an ADHD skills group. I think it was the technical term for it. And it was really interesting. We were talking about different strategies and tips to help work through with ADHD. And one of which was talking about decluttering your actual space. And a lot of people were talking about how important that was to have a space that felt like it wasn't cluttered and that helped them really focus. I was like, wait a second, I know somebody who can really help with this. And she even right as I was about to mention it, because I was asking Lee, I'm like, I think it's okay to share the link. She was like, yeah, and I feel like there might be like different groups or something like that you might be able to get into to help with this. I don't know any off the top of my head. And I was like, raise my hand. I'm like, hey, can I go ahead and share somebody who I know does really great with this type of work and really can help people in that way? And yeah, went through and went to ask Lee really quick. I'm like, hey, can I get a link? Can I get a link over to go ahead and send? So
Oh, yeah. So the leader of that ADHD group asked for it. And then you were like asking me if it was okay to send Brittany stuff.
yeah, making
What?
sure and where to send them to in terms of what would be the best spot for them to land, because it was a pretty good sized group and they all seemed really interested. So I was like, okay, seems like the target audience, but I don't know which target to send them to, if you will,
Yeah.
to aim them at.
Yeah. And you actually asked a really important question that I think relates to this week's episode. You were like, can I promote Brittany's business in this space when Brittany works with us at the Institute? Is that a conflict of interest? And I think that this is something that so many people are afraid of. They're like, can I promote this thing that benefits someone else if it also benefits me too? And the answer is
Yeah, because
yes.
I was thinking, I was like, I'm not directly benefiting, and I'm like, and she's perfect for exactly in terms of what they were talking about, and so it seems a win for them, and I'm not directly benefiting, but yeah, that whole thought of, "Is this somehow unethical?" It didn't
Yeah.
feel unethical, but sometimes that's where that worry creeps in of, "Am I doing something that's not right? Is this?"
Yeah. Yeah. I want to save this for a conversation we're going to have in a few minutes because there are some business models that actually rely on you using affiliate marketing and benefiting off of sharing someone else's work. And so we get to have a conversation about mutual benefit and what it looks like and the harm that can be caused when mutual benefit is not present. And so TLC comes to me to finish the story. TLC comes to me and he's, hey, I can't, can you find me a link? I'm like, sure. So I go on Brittany, I go on your Facebook and then I go on your website and then I try to find your Facebook page and I'm like, do I, where is she? Where is something to buy? Where is something to send people to? I can't find anything. I'm like, I know she does this. I've referred clients to her. I can't find it. And so I messaged Brittany jokingly and also calling you in a little bit. And I was like, hi, so do you want clients? Because I don't know how to give them to you. And that actually led to a really, I think, great conversation around, and Brittany, I'll let you tell your story, but looking at how sometimes trauma can lead us to hide in business. And so, Brittany, I, again, so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this chat.
And we were talking before this. I think there was a little piece of this that felt wobbly for you before we started. And I know that was something that we wanted to talk through before we got into it.
Yeah, this feels very vulnerable, which I'm embracing actually. And also it feels like such a good opportunity to offer some healing to other business owners out there who have been in hiding or have experienced trauma with in another space, whether it be mentorship or anything. And really, I want to offer the world the opportunity to come out of hiding if that's
Mm.
where you are, because I see you. You're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm hiding with you. Josie, well, Doc told me that I took my business off the grid, which obviously in today's world is not the best business strategy.
Well, you can be off the grid as long as there is some way for people to find you, right? We actually talk about this in our Healing Center business program, which all three of us help run. You'll see Brittany's face a good amount and hear her voice a good amount, read her emails if you're in that program. And we talk about there's four main things that a business needs, right? We need something to sell, we need a place to sell it where like people are, we need a way for people to buy it, and we need a way to deliver it. And basically, you had a business with you had a store that people could walk up to, but there was like no door handle to turn the door to come in.
Yes, it was a tease shop. I'm just teasing them.
It's a front, right? You're like, we're not actually really doing things in here. I actually had somebody talking about, this is so random and I'm going to share it anyway. Somebody was talking about mattress firms. They were like, it's a front because who goes into a mattress firm and actually buy it? There's no way that they have this 10,000 square foot of it's a front. And I was like, well, okay. But
I've always
you could,
thought that myself. I always thought, you see 2 mattress stores on the same street, like, how is that possible? Something seems fishy.
yeah, like who is going into a store to buy a mattress anymore? That just seems really weird. And actually, a lot of people go into stores to buy mattresses because they want to lay on them and experience them first. And oh my goodness, what a lesson for business, right? So many of us do this. So many of us create these businesses. And then due to past painful experiences, we make it so that people can't come in the door. They can't access the thing because we're afraid of, well, what happens after they buy it? Or what happens if I open the door and nobody comes in? Or what happens if I open the door and somebody comes in and sticks me up and steals all my mattresses, right? What if somebody hurts me or harms me? And so, oh, I'll just take the doorknob off the door.
Yeah.
Does that track for you?
Yeah. Absolutely. I sealed that door shut, baby.
That's
Nobody's
so
getting into this business.
And that's so we say this term, that's so cute. Like, that is so adorable that your brain was like, "I love Brittany so much, and I wanna protect her so much. I'm gonna seal the door shut to this thing that she wants to send to the world and make it so nobody can find it or nobody can get in. And also, we're not gonna advertise that this store exists. So let's just take the sign off the front of the store too. Maybe turn the lights off. Make people even wonder if there is something in there that they can buy if we're ever open." And a lot of people do this in their
We
businesses.
just
And
kind of
they're like,
we fade.
yeah. And then it's, well, why there's there's some then shame and like guilt. And last week we talked about the freeze or the flight energy. I think that's what I see in this description of your off the grid, door sealed shut, sign off, lights off business. And then the other part of this is there's this piece in us that shames ourselves for having done that. And it's like, you should be able to turn the lights back on and you should be able to put that sign on. Why haven't you done that yet? And why haven't you put the doorknob back on? And what's wrong with you? What's wrong with us? Why can't we just get through this?
Yep. Yeah. Personally, there's a lot of shame like still swirling around in my body that I get to work through. And I almost felt like unprepared to share my story today. But in reality, this is a great time to share it. I'm still in it. I'm not just going to share my success story once I'm on the other side. People can sit in this with me.
Yeah. And the other piece is that shame can only exist in isolation. So I hear you saying, I'm still in it. And so other people can go through this with me. Like, why wait till I'm fully healed? And I just want to reflect to anybody listening to this that the second you decide to take the shame public, you are already way further through this than you think you are. Because the shame is what tells you you're like way back at the beginning of the process. You're nowhere close to being healed. And once you say it publicly and people are like, oh my gosh, same girl. Oh, I did that too. Or, oh, you feel a lot of shame around that because I wouldn't have ever expected that you feel a lot of shame around that. And then you're like, wait a second. I told myself that I could not talk about this for the longest time. And sometimes you even feel shame around the fact that you felt shame for so long. And then you talk about it and you're like, this wasn't even that big of a deal. And so I just want to name the pieces and parts to that process because I think it's really important for people to understand shame is pervasive and there's layers.
And I think the internet and even the world in general need more of that because I feel like so many times what you end up seeing as the final product, everybody then takes as well, this is how it was for them. And this was so easy because they only see the final result when everything is already worked through and everything is nicely polished. And it's, oh, okay, I'm not there. So it's, oh, then I'm nowhere or I'm struggling more. And it's like seeing more of, yeah, it takes a little while to get there. And then seeing eventually the polished and finished result. I think that's even more impactful and more needed nowadays.
Yeah. We talk about that we know it is a regulated time to share a story of trauma that you've been through when it is fully scabbed over and starting to scar. Because if you do this before the scab's like ready to fall off and there's a scar underneath, and I know this is like a little grody, but we're going with it. When you decide that you're going to expose a wound that's just like freshly scabbed and even the slightest poke is going to cause it to bleed, if you're out there sharing those kinds of stories, what's going to happen is somebody's going to comment something, someone's going to do something, and you're going to start bleeding all over the place and you're actually going to hurt yourself more. So just reflecting back that what I see is you're at a place where the scab's like falling off and there's scar tissue underneath of it. And yeah, it's still a little sensitive. It's still a little tender. You can tell something happened there. And if you were really rough with it, it would get hurt again,
Yeah.
but it's not like fresh.
I've had a good amount of time to really sit with the experience that I've had over the last few years and own my own stuff and not own the stuff that wasn't mine to own, which felt
Hmm.
good. Um, but I feel ready to say, okay, this is what I experienced. I've worked through a lot of the nuances of the situation, and I am deeply committed to being some sort of light, a beacon of light for folks out there who are hiding or feel ashamed or all of that stuff that makes us sit back and say, we're not good enough to provide this for others, or we're not good enough to do XYZ. I want people to use their own discernment to decide that from themselves, for themselves from a healed space instead of a I'm just ashamed of myself space.
Yeah. And I think I see that reflected so much in the work you do around clutter and complexity. And because I think that when you have a lot of clutter and you have a lot of complexity in your life, shame is almost invariably mixed in there somewhere. When we talk about hoarding or ADHD, executive dysfunction, like there's so much shame around like, why can't I just get my shit together?
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense to me that because we talk about this too a lot is oftentimes the businesses we are called to create are serving a need that we did not have met.
Mm,
And so it makes so much sense that, of course, you're now ready to start talking about your business again. And of course, you're ready to say, hey, here are some of the red flags I've seen being in multiple coaching spaces. And by the way, y'all, we're not going to be exempt from this. We've tossed up some red flags at times. Myself in particular, I've done some things that have been harmful that I've had to own. And so just you being able to come out and publicly speak on these things. And again, not to shame other people and not to shame yourself and to also bring clarity and just really simply be like, these are some of the ways that we hurt each other in these spaces.
yeah.
You, your story is similar to, I think, a lot of people's entrepreneurial stories where you shifted in a big move from your full time corporate traditional employment to entrepreneurship. And it was a shift that took you not just into your decluttering and like simplicity, clarity work, it also took you into trying to create clarity and simplicity in another business as a VA, correct?
Yes. Yes.
VA is virtual assistant, y'all, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the term. And what were some of the things you like look back on now and you're like, oh, those were red flags, either both on my side, like I should have maybe thought to do things differently here, and on the side of that move from corporate to entrepreneurship?
So then the first thing that comes to mind is that when I was telling my previous employer that it was time for me to go, which he and I have a fantastic relationship, and it really was a beautiful situation as far as like our chat with each other about it being time for me to leave. But looking back, I really shouldn't have felt like I needed to puke in that moment. Had I been more aware in the moment of how my nerve was behaving, right? I would have been like, maybe this exact moment, maybe I need to think about this a little bit more. So looking back, I would have trusted my intuition more. I would have looked for the red flags.
So you say that you felt like you wanted to puke. I want to explore this a little bit more because a lot of people might feel like they wanna puke because they are afraid they're gonna disappoint this person that really cares about them, and they're telling them that they can't work for them anymore. A lot of people feel like they're gonna puke because They have a history of people pleasing and they're so afraid of what this boss is going to try to do. Some people feel like they're going to puke because maybe they feel like they're letting someone else in their lives down by giving up on this profession. That was mine because I also felt like I was going to puke when I went to talk to both my managers. But that was because I had this story in the back of my head like, you are failing, like, you are throwing away 12 years of education to go over here. So sometimes that feeling like you're going to puke is your intuition going, hey, slow down, pause. And sometimes that feeling is, no, I'm doing what's right. And my ego is just like freaking out about it. So just knowing your story, I think it was the first one where maybe there were some pieces and parts in that weren't in place to provide you like this stability and the safety that you needed in order to make that move. And so what would you do differently now if you were going to make that move again?
So I most definitely, my intuition was screaming at the time that the financial situation was not going to be what it was supposed to be.
So not your ego.
To
This was your soul going, girl, you are not protected.
absolutely 100% my soul saying, no, this is not it. And not from an ego perspective at all. And in fact, when I was talking to my former boss saying it was time to go, we were like joking around. I was never worried about disappointing him. And like he and I have a great relationship. My intuition was telling me, do not, do not pass. Do not.
So slow down and take some time to put some other things in place.
Yes. And in hindsight, it would have been very beneficial for me to maybe ease off my corporate job, take a step back, and then start building something over on the side. And I ripped away all the safety of my salary,
Mhm.
right? And that was not a good decision in the long run. I'm sorry, Brittany's intuition, that I ignored you.
And that's really beautiful to own for yourself. I harmed myself in that moment. Yes, I know you. I know that there were things that were like there were agreements that were made that weren't necessarily made in a legally binding way that would have protected you more. And I think the thing that people don't understand about entrepreneurship too is like you sign contracts with clients or you sign contracts with people that you're coming on with. And y'all, we're actually going to refer you to an incredible podcast. We're going to have it in the show notes. It's called Girl Boss Red Flags. My friends Aaron and Tay put this on, and they actually have a lawyer who's on there who talks all about our contracts and our obligations and all of those pieces. And so we'll make sure that episode's tagged. And part of me like looks at, I'm saying little Brittany, but like young Brittany, younger Brittany that made that move without the safety net. And like, you also didn't know what you didn't know. Yes, your intuition was yelling at you, but sometimes our intuition yells at us and we don't know what it's saying.
I was totally right. I said the back seat, Brittany was just afraid to do something new. That's what I was telling myself.
So there was and y'all, so many people don't know the difference in what their ego sounds like versus their soul sounds like.
Mm. That has been, I've done a lot of work over the last year of really fine tuning which voice I am listening to. And I can say with confidence now, I understand when my soul is protecting me and I understand when my brain is trying to protect me and maybe it's unnecessary.
Yeah, because the other piece is that you made that move pretty fast, right? It was a,
Fast.
and this TLC to his credit, part of the reason that my ego is so freaking annoyed by him so often because he slows me down when my ego's, let's go. And he's, hey, so have you thought about this or have you thought about that? Like, I get so mad at him. And now I can at least recognize that's what I'm doing. Brittany, I'm curious. And I think a lot of people would be interested to hear too, because I think for partners of humans who are making this decision to shift out of a traditional job into entrepreneurship, sometimes their egos and their souls can start getting into it, and then it all gets really confusing. So, did that play a part in this at all?
I'm fortunate to have a very supportive husband who I say that I'm like quite whimsical. I like to just go where the wind takes me. And he knows that if I feel like my whimsy is stifled, that I'm not going to be a happy camper. So he tries to help me foster my desire to go where the wind blows me. So he was very supportive. I could tell he had reservations, but he was like, I trust you. I trust that what you're doing is what you believe at this moment is best for our family. And I've carried some shame about that because I had my intuition screaming at me that it wasn't the right move, but I was misinterpreting it. And so I had shame around that. But now I've had shame around it saying I took advantage of my husband's kindness. And that's not actually the case. It was a simple misinterpretation. And whatever the motivation behind that misinterpretation was, it is irrelevant at this point. I was misinterpreting. And now I know better and I get to do better. But I definitely carried a lot of shame around that. So it prevented me from talking to my husband about my business because if things were hard, then my ego was like, we want to tell the world that like, this isn't working. This doesn't feel good. Right. So we'll just be quiet, fade into the background. And then when I'm on the other side of it, then I could be like, oh yeah, that was hard, but we're good now.
I'm laughing because I'm watching TLC emphatically nod as you were talking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish everyone could see my face right now because I'm over here being like, oh my goodness, I'm listening to you describe me. And I think a lot of people are listening to you describe them right now.
Yeah. And I will say it's interesting because being on the other side of that situation, it was weird because I had some of the same kind of feelings like you were just talking about coming up, but in my head, I tend to be more of a critical person of generally all things, not to the point of like cynicism or complete like skepticism, but normally when I hear something, my first thought is, okay, where are the holes? Where are the issues and stuff coming up? And so when Lee was first starting to talk about this, my brain went to, will you trust her to do, really smart, really capable? And if in my head, I'm like, I need to just stop being as critical because sometimes I'm just critical to be critical. And I'm like, I'm not trying to stifle your excitement. But it's like seeing her as lit up and excited about this, especially from before being in nursing, it was like, yeah, there were certain things you'd be like, "Oh, this is really cool that I got to do," but it had been quite a while at that point since you had come home and been like, "There was this crazy procedure that I got to see," or "There was this patient that was really interesting," and stuff. At that point, even though you were doing great work, it had been a while since I saw that. So I think in some ways I was like, "Oh, I see how excited you are and how lit up," and I'm like, part of my brain went to, "Oh, I need to stop being as critical or as worried," because I'm like, but yeah, just it's interesting now. It's yeah, not that the criticism would be like getting rid of the excitement, but just thinking now, oh yeah, can talk through things. It's not like a ego type thing, being real on some things. That makes
Brittany, I'm actually curious about this TLC. When you said something, this made me recognize that when I would bring you an idea and I was really excited about it, and if you would be even remotely questioning of it, I was like, "Fine, forget it, never mind. The whimsy's gone." Brittany,
And just thinking about when he was talking, I'm like, oh gosh, yeah. I could tell when it's my ego because if anybody questions me, I'm like, screw it, I'm out. And then if it's something that is my intuition is, yes, this is it, let's do it. This push it on. And sometimes I'm gonna say, you know what? I don't have an answer for that, but it just feels right in my bones. And I can confidently say that instead of something ridiculous. Mm.
it's a important distinction to make, and actually this comes back to our nervous system regulation. Because if it is coming from a regulated place, which by the way, y'all, like when we use the terms ego and soul, I know those can be used in a lot of different ways. I see my ego as it is just my brain. Like my soul is that part. It's the essence of us that's like here to be expressed and create. And it wants what it wants and it doesn't rush to get it. It wants what it wants and it needs what it needs. And there's no, I don't know about y'all, but like people could try to argue with my soul's perspective all day long. And my soul would be like, oh, okay, noted. Thank you so much for sharing your opinion. And I'm going to take that into consideration and mean it. I'm going to take what you said into consideration and maybe shift things slightly. And also, if that doesn't track, I'm still going to do what I think is right. It's not rushed and it's also not easily deterred. So, what you just said there, and this is, I think, something that is so important because one of the biggest red flags I have found both in myself causing harm to others or causing harm to myself, or in others causing harm to me and me not catching it. If I go back and look at those situations, and I'm curious for both of you if you feel this way too. If I go back and look at those situations, if I'm the one perpetuating the harm, I'm rushing or I'm stuck and frozen and overwhelmed and not moving at all. If someone else is perpetuating the harm, they're rushing me or they are doing something that freaks my nervous system out enough to the point that I get stuck or frozen or overwhelmed.
Feeling rushed basically describes the last 5 years of being an entrepreneur. Not this past year. I've really slowed down. But before that was it. I was constantly feeling pushed into something. Do this quickly. Create content. You've got 30 minutes. Create as much content as possible. Leave your job quickly. Let's get you on the other side. Let's make $1,000 as fast as possible so you can build that belief. And when I would in like my mentorship space, if I had those feelings of I'm moving too quickly and it doesn't feel, it was dismissed.
Mhm.
And now that I have had time to process what I experienced on the other side of it, now I know if I am feeling like I'm moving too quickly, that is valid. I am allowed to feel like I'm moving too fast and I'm allowed to slow down. But there's so much shame around if you're not moving fast, if you're not getting those sales, if you're not filling your pipeline, if you're not pounding the pavement, like if you're not doing these things and doing them quickly and doing them consistently, then you're doing it wrong.
Hmm.
And that, my friends, is untrue.
Yeah, that's highly dysregulating.
Absolutely. It's just, I felt like it was constant rush into the next thing, see if it works. If it doesn't work, stop it, move on. That's not how I operate. I want to calmly do something. I want feedback. I want to tweak a step, move forward. I don't, the constant cycle of scrap it if it's not working and move to the next thing doesn't suit me. Maybe that suits someone else. It doesn't suit me. And to have like, it's almost like gaslighting in a way of, hey, this isn't working for me, will work for you. You don't want it bad enough, or you're not moving fast enough. And whatever that narrative is that you're hearing from mentorship is, if it doesn't feel right in your soul, listen to that.
Yeah. Because even if it's your ego talking to you, I don't care if your soul is screaming like, hey, we're moving too fast, slow down. Or if your ego is screaming like, hey, we're moving too fast, slow down. Guess what? Both of those are valid pieces of data that we get to slow down and go just for a second and go, okay, is my ego telling me to slow down because it's scared of what's on the other side of us doing this? And in reality, I don't need to slow down at all. I get to feel safer around this. So maybe I just need to be able to call somebody and say, hey, my ego is really talking to me today. Can I tell you all the mean things it's saying? And then can you tell me that I'm awesome at what I do. And then I'll hang up and I'll go do the thing. Like I don't need to slow down except to give myself what I need in that moment. Versus your soul, if your soul's telling you to slow down, you slowing down is also going to be super beneficial because it's going to be like, thank you. Absolutely. And the other part of this I want to pull out too is that sometimes when you invalidate your own needs for a more regulated, aligned pace and you go, there comes a point where your nervous system's like, yeah, you're not going no more. And you will flip into that, like that freeze, that deer in the headlights, that I can't get myself to do anything state. And this is something that I think is so surprising for people because when they're in that state, what their ego says is, we need to speed up. We need to speed up. We need to speed up. And it's no, in both states of dysregulation, you need to slow down.
Yes.
If you are moving
Yes.
too fast or you are not moving at all, guess what? Your body's not moving, but your mind is. Your mind needs to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge red flag to me when I see a mentor telling somebody when they say, hey, I feel stuck, or hey, I feel like this is going too fast for me, when they go, you just need to keep going, or you just need to speed up, or you just need to, you're fine. It's okay. Don't worry about how you're feeling. That is, I think, the biggest perpetuation of harm that is just pervasive throughout. I think it's present not just in business. I think it's present in how we tell our kids to speed up. I'm working on this as a mom. I think it's present in how we show up at work and all parts of our lives.
Yeah, and I think too, just even from the overall narrative perspective within media and stuff like that, when whether it be business or whatever, it's like the work harder, push faster. It's like the success stories that you hear. It's, oh, he was sleeping under his desk, working 90 hours a week. And it's that was how you succeeded. So it wasn't by slowing down or anything like that. And it's interesting. I always thought that's how things work. That was the only way really it worked. And the reason people became successful is because they were better able to do that than other people, or at least from like male perspective, like from by weaker people or less capable people. It wasn't because they didn't want to do that. The idea was always just, at least they just didn't care enough. They weren't willing to work hard enough. And it was like, so it wasn't that could even be good. That was just if you couldn't hack it, if you couldn't work to the level that you needed to work, okay, that was okay for some people. But if you wanna really be successful, it's just speed up. It's just keep working it. And for me, it was funny. It took me a while to even separate the idea of between ego and soul, between anything like that. The idea was just that was how it went. And I think once reached like a point where I was like, this isn't really tenable. It was like, okay, I just need to try and get rid of all that, like tamp all that down because then I don't know. I don't know. Made it a lot harder to trust any of the things that I thought that I was like, okay, I'm pretty for sure on this. Well, I'm like, I also thought I was sure on this other thing and it didn't work out. So it was weird. It would go from really like hyper level of you need to push through, you need to do everything to like the opposite of wait, maybe I don't know. Okay, maybe I shouldn't push on anything. And it's that weird mentality there.
And it's not weird though, because you just
Right.
described something that, but this is what I want to pull out. The shame of us even publicly talking about this. You're like, oh, that's weird. No, it's not. That's not weird. Like, I've
Certainly
got
not
the,
weird as in unusual, right? It's not
right.
unusual.
Right. And by the way, the word weird means magical. So I would not describe that process as magical. I would describe that process as mundane and torturous. And like, there's not magic happening in that process. There's a loss of light and magic in that process of because you are just rapid cycling from go faster than what feels comfortable to then don't move at all. And as humans, like we're designed to be in motion a good amount of the time. And we're also designed to spend like a third of our lives not moving. And I actually want to bring in something here that I think is important because I saw this yesterday. So one of the things I used to not do is I wouldn't let myself unfollow or unfriend or block people, even people I didn't know, because I was like, they friended me and they're in business and we should all be friends. They're friends with my mentor and my mentor likes them. So I should be friends with them. I should follow. I saw a post last night and it was somebody talking about how they used to work 10 to 15-hour weeks and they were making 40 to 80K a month. And it looked like this beautiful business on the outside, but they weren't happy because they are happy working 80-hour plus weeks. And I saw this post and I went immediately, my brain was like, are you sure? And then I thought, you know what? It's not my place to tell this person what feels best for them. I don't know this person's soul. I don't know this person's ego. I don't know their past painful experiences. I don't know. What I do know is that me reading that makes me feel wrong. And so it has nothing to do with whether or not that person's messaging is right or wrong. What it has to do with is that obviously I'm not this person's ideal client because I don't need sped up anymore. Let's just say it that way. And so often we are taught to like shame ourselves, TLC, the way you were saying. We are taught to just absorb these messages and make ourselves wrong if that message doesn't resonate. So we'll either, or we'll make the other person wrong and be like, you're obviously dysregulated because you gave up a 10 to 15-hour a week business for an 80-hour a week business because you just like to strive and drive and push. That's what my brain initially said. And I was like, you don't know that about them. What you know is that message just dysregulated you and not from a place, it triggered you. It didn't activate you. It didn't make you think, oh, maybe I should look at my work hours more. It made me think, see, you should be working harder than you are. It made me literally have the thought, you should have stayed up and worked on the sales page more last night, even though you'd already worked 12 hours today. And I was like, oh, that's an immediate unfollow. Because if these are going to be the messages, and we ain't friends, I don't think she knows me from Adam. So I think that that's one thing for just a stranger on the internet. It's another thing entirely if you have paid money, left your job. And I think something that we get to bring in here too and talk about is if you are being paid by somebody who is also mentoring you, that can get gnarly. That can get a little messy.
I will say this, working with the Trauma Institute, I have access to the programming free of charge. And it allows me to serve those clients better because I am a part of the programming. And it is not expected of me to pay for those service, to pay for the same service that I'm supposed to be a resource for. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And when you get in a situation where you're paying for something that you're also leading, then you're never really that participant role. You're not receiving the same kind of healing or mentorship or whatever it might be. You're not receiving that same level of as just a paying client. So I have been so grateful at the Trauma Institute that, like if we do a program, I just go into the back end of things and I give myself access to it because I want to dig into it. I want to know what we're saying to people. I want to be able, if somebody comes to me with a question, I want to be able to provide an answer that is in alignment with the Institute's values. And that gets really murky if I'm also draining my bank account to be able to participate and to be able to answer questions in a way that is in alignment with the provider, right?
So I'm really glad you're speaking on this because I don't think we talk about this. I haven't heard people talk about this. So we typically hire people who have gone through at least one of our programs because the way we do things and teach things is so different than a lot of other places that I want y'all to know what you're getting into and feel like you can fully commit to the values and the vision that we have. And you can't do that if you haven't experienced the work. And so we will get people asking us all the time if we're hiring. And I'm like, yes, we're always open to hire people as we have needs. And 95% of the people we've hired have come from our programs. Interestingly, one of the things that I have realized is I, if I am going to hire somebody into a program, they cannot deliver any trauma sensitive content until they have gone through our trauma sensitive training as a participant. So they can be in the back end doing other things, but if they are going to be interacting with clients in any sort of way, guess what? They have to at least gone through one of our 4-week or 6-week programs. Ideally, they've gone through Healing Centered Business School at this point. And in fact, one of the new people we're bringing on, we said, "Would I love to have you start doing sales calls today?" Yes, because you're very good at sales and you've been trained how to do sales for 20 years outside of a trauma informed space. So the likelihood you're going to do some subtle things, even with the best of intentions, is really high. And then that shifts the experience of everyone coming in. So, do I want to? Again, it's that time thing. Do I want to wait 6 months for you to do sales calls? No. Are we going to wait 6 months for you to do sales calls? Yeah. And in the meantime, there's other things you can be doing. So, that's the first thing. The second thing is that when people we hire people from our programs and we're like, "Okay, so you get to continue participating in these things and or go into these new programs and you do not pay for them." And I made this mistake. In one of the first programs we ran at the institute, I had 2 people who were supporting us also paying. And I realized at the end of that, that creates some really wonky dynamics.
There's also the added piece of when, especially in a mentorship program, like you're probably going to have live calls or at least some sort of call, or when you've got someone who's paying for the program, they're there to get the takeaways they need for themselves. When
Yeah.
you have someone who is helping you deliver the program and paying for it, they are most likely listening in order to service the other paying participants, not from a lens of, okay, how is this going to benefit me? So it's totally different. It's not that you can't then take away that information and apply it to yourself, whether it be personal development or just business growth or whatever. It's not that you can't take those concepts. It's that it's almost double work. It feels like double work to your brain. And so then it creates this wonkiness of like, why am I paying thousands of dollars when it's my job?
And we're perpetuating something that happens in corporate by doing this because my nursing training, when I got hired on to the university where I ended up practicing, they were so stoked to have me. And they were like, because we just trained you for 2 straight years in our practices. So, of course, we want you here. Right. And if at that point they had said, you're not going to earn, if they had offered me an unpaid internship at that point, because I've seen this. There's a lot of professions like this where you get out of school, you already trained in this place, and they're like, great, you're going to have an unpaid internship. And basically, you're paying for college to learn, and then we're not paying you while you provide us service, and you're welcome because this gets to go on your resume.
Right, like, it's this beautiful gesture, like, we are doing you the biggest favor by allowing you to provide your time and your energy and your ideas. You're gonna pour that into us, and we're giving you something to type onto your resume.
And I will say this about the Ohio I'll say Ohio State here, because I'm speaking highly of them. When I came on as a professor, they said, "Hey, we want all of our professors to have their DNPs by their doctorates by this particular time." This was a Friday, and they were like, "Our next cohort starts Monday. You down? It's free." And I was like, "Okay, y'all are offering me a free doctorate. That's amazing. Heck yeah, I'm in. I'll do that." That was a fun conversation coming from to us. See, like, I got the job. And by the way, is it cool if I go get my doctorate? He's like, "Didn't we talk about you not going back to school again?" That was one of those whimsy conversations. Um, but I bring that in because if at that point they had said, "Hey, you're going to work for us and we require you to have a doctorate and you can get your doctorate here for only 50% of the price," I would have been like, "Wait a second. I am paying you to teach me to get a requirement to do the job that it just gets really it would have been hard to be a teacher, a student, receiving money while also paying money. That would have felt really uh murky. It wouldn't have been clear. It wouldn't have been simple.
I to
And
think of the
so,
PA system.
oh yeah, TAs were there.
Right.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, we'll pay for part of this. We'll pay for part of this." But when you look at it, it's like not a living anyway. We're getting off.
Yeah.
But I no, I'm getting off track. Like I own that. I'm not getting off track. That was a little shame this gets to go where it goes. I think the thing is that I wanna pull out of that is we bring that over into entrepreneurship and we don't think twice about it.
Mhm.
And we're like, "Why would I offer this person this thing for free when everybody else is paying for it?" And I'm like, "'Cause they're on your freaking team."
And it does create this dynamic of sometimes as a paying client, I wasn't going to show up for a call because one, maybe it didn't pertain to me, or two, I just didn't have the capacity at the moment. I wanted to watch the replay. But then that option is taken away, right? Because you need to show up in order to be able to help the people. And they're your peers too.
And
So
that's
you're friends with a lot of these people. And then you're like, I don't want to do a disservice to them, regardless of how wonky this might feel. I don't want to do a disservice to these people who I care about so deeply. And I want to see them succeed. But then I'm constantly doing that at the expense of my capacity.
yeah. And the other thing I think is important too is that when I say 95% of the people that we hire come from within our spaces, I'm not talking about like $15,000 programs. I'm talking about they took a $297 course and came to us and went, "Yeah, this is something I think I want." And I think that is such an important distinction because if the only way you can work with somebody like a mentor you really want to work with is by being in an 100K program for a year and just to get the opportunity to work by their side. And a lot of coaches do this. They say that'll be part of this is like you get to work with us. And this is a mistake that I made too. I and it's hard to own that. Again, there's still some shame there of I didn't know what I didn't know. And when I look at the people who've gone through our higher level $10,000, $10,000 plus programs, they are some of the first people that I'm like, "Oh, can I hire this person? Oh, that's somebody I'd like to tag in and help us." And if that's not your thought process, and yet you're telling people that's your thought process,
Hmm.
and the other part of what you just said is what does it look like for those of us who have a team that are going through programs? It is never expected for you to be on the public calls, right? It is never expected for you to show up and model for people what it looks like to be vulnerable and ask about your own business questions and things because you're holding a dual role, like you said, or even a triple role. You're friends with people in the program, you're a participant, and you work for the organization. Your priorities in each of those roles are different. And so, how are you supposed to honor all three sets of priorities simultaneously?
And don't forget, you better be hustling in your business while you do all this,
Yeah.
So, that's a
right?
fourth role. Not only do you
Framework.
have to show up to the program, help us grow our business, be a mentor or a leader or an example for or hold space for the other participants, but you also need to be a shining star and a proof that what I'm teaching works.
No pressure,
Nope.
right? Actually, something popped up for me. Can I share?
Yeah.
One of the other things that I experienced that kind of goes hand in hand with this is like the moving quickly is still a theme throughout this, right? You're constantly showing up for things to try to fulfill all of these roles. But what you were saying with bringing on somebody new now and saying, okay, yeah, we could put you on sales calls right away, but we want to walk our talk. We want to embody our values. And so I'm not going to move too quickly because I know that has the potential to perpetuate harm. And as a trauma institute, we're not down with harming people knowingly, right? We're not going to go into it with the intention of causing harm. And so when you really embody your values, you can step back and say, okay, would I love to have her on the sales calls right away? That would be incredible. But knowing that's just not going to be a possibility and allowing her access to the training that she needs to feel good about providing those sales calls for people without a barrier of, oh, you can do this and we really like you. We think you're the right person for it. We just need $5,000 from you for you to take this training and then you can for me. That's not what we're doing here. And when you also have your own business on the side, okay, like I had reached a point where it didn't feel like I had permission to serve my clients in a way that felt good for me because I was setting up a business that didn't embody my values. My values are to move intentionally, and most of the time that means slowly. And I couldn't move slowly. I didn't have that permission to move at my own pace. But what was an additional strain on my capacity and my energy is that if I speak up on my desire to move slowly, intentionally, verbally, it's okay, we can do this however you want. But then every piece of advice or mentorship that was given to me did not embody that. It didn't allow me to move intentionally. And so actually during one of our calls, Lee, in the business program, I remember you saying to me, actually, I think this was a one-on-one with you. I remember me saying to you, it goes against everything in my being for me to sit down on Facebook and say, I'm going to message 50 people. I'm going to cold message 50 people today because that's how you set up a solid pipeline of leads. That's how it's done, right? It goes against everything in my body because one, I like small talk. It comes across as fake. I cannot do small talk. And so mentorship is telling me that the way to make sales is to message 50 people today and start a conversation and be intentional. Don't just look for the money. You don't want the sale. That's not what the purpose is. You just want to establish relationships with these people. So I would sit down and I would try to do that. It was still about the sale, right? Because I'm sitting there messaging people, trying to build my pipeline of leads. I hate small talk. So it didn't make any sense for me to try to build relationships starting out with talk. And when I said that in other experiences, it was like, oh, I get it, but you're going to have to get over it because this is how it's done. And then when I say that to Dr. Lee, I verbatim, you were like, okay, let's never do that again. That's what you said to me. Let's never do that again. And I was like, what? It's that a big? Are we allowed to never do that again? The amount of relief my body felt in that moment was immense. And it was so simple for you to say that, like, okay, duh, let's not do that again, right? Obviously, we're not gonna do that. But I never had that permission. And I never gave that permission to myself. And in hindsight, I could have, but we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And when we're paying someone thousands of dollars to give us advice, we inherently trust that advice is going to be right for us, right? Like when that much money is on the line, I don't feel like you will use as much discernment because you've already made the decision that I trust this person and I'm going to pay them to give me advice. So that kind of takes a back seat a little bit. And now it doesn't for me, but at the time it did because I was like, no, Brittany, you're paying this person to give you advice and you're not taking.
I it's fascinating for me when you are talking about this because this is a place that actually my shame still really pops up. It's like, oh, Brittany's saying really nice things about you on your podcast. And so let's just crawl under the desk and turn it off and be done. I don't, this is still something TLC laughs at me. He's like, when people talk kindly about you, like you would like to just Homer Simpson into the bushes. And I'm like, I'm working on it. I'm working on just being like, thank you. So thank you for saying that. I honestly don't even remember that conversation. And the reason I don't remember that conversation is because do you know how many times I've had that conversation with people? Right. So there is no one way to do anything. And if you want evidence of this, go on TikTok and watch the videos of people asking how you put on your shoes and socks. Is it sock, sock, shoe? Is it sock, shoe, sock, shoe? How do you do that? Is it always the left foot first and the right foot first? Everybody's got a different way of putting on their socks and shoes. And guess what? We all have socks and shoes on when we walk out of the house. But if you try to change up somebody's pattern of socks and shoes, then they're like, oh, that feels really weird. Or if you're like, hey, you're not allowed to wear socks because some people don't wear socks. You're like, you have to wear sandals instead of sneakers. And people are like, I don't like sandals. I don't want to wear sandals. Now, some people may not like sandals because they've never worn sandals. They might have an experience of putting on sandals and be like, oh, this is nice. Right. And people have to choose. Like, the only way that people can be responsible for their own businesses is if they make the choices for themselves inside of their businesses and they do not make them out of obligation to you as the coach or the mentor. And it is as much as some coaches and mentors truly do try to pedestalize themselves and be like, I am the guru, you are the student, do what I say. I think that's not the norm. I think most people who get into coaching and mentorship really do care about giving their people choice. They really do care about their people feeling like they're on a level playing field with them. And if you're not like intentionally centering the need for choice with people, they just spent, like you said, they just spent $5,000, $10,000 with you. Even if they spent $5 with you, they just invested not just their money and their time and their energy, they invested their trust in you. And so if you say, I think this is what you should do, they are more likely to do that, whether they think it's a good idea or not. So the amount of intentionality when you're like, oh, it's so simple for you to say that. There is so much intentionality that goes into my language. And people, if you notice me in coaching programs, I'll start to say, like, so yeah, you could just do, and I'm like, okay, hold on. Invitation, if it feels right for you, and please feel into this, to try this. Like when you hear me suggest this, how does that feel in your body? Does that feel like something you want to do? And that in the moment, it takes more brain power, it takes more time, it takes more energy. I have to a lot of times slow myself back down and go, okay. And by centering that choice in every piece, one of the things that I have never heard from someone is you led me to do things that I didn't want to do.
Mhm. Yes.
Sometimes they're like, this didn't work because I believed this thing or because I did this or I did that. But I honestly don't hear people say, I was manipulated or led into doing things in the Institute's programs. Yeah, sometimes they don't work out the way people wanted them to. But if they look back, they're like, you didn't make any promises. And there are two places, and actually, I want to publicly own this. There are two places where we did make guarantees that, like, in the back end, we are in the process of cleaning up or have already cleaned up. And one was around a conference where we had told our teacher trainers that they were going to be able to speak at this conference, and then the conference didn't get put on. And so What I did is I went to every single one of them and I said, "Hey, as a something even better, we're gonna relaunch this in March 2025. Come in for free. Y'all, this is a $12,000, $15,000 program." And I was like, "Come back in for free. Do it again with us," because wasn't in full integrity in that program, and I wanna be in full integrity in that program. So, this is my second attempt. Come back. The other place is we were working on doing a trauma sensitive business certification. And so people who first came into our first trauma sensitive business collective, we had told them, hey, you're going to be able to get certified. And we didn't do that. And so that is something that I've been thinking about actually the last several weeks in the back of my brain. What are we going to do with that? And I already have a list of the humans that I'm like reaching out to and going, hey, this didn't happen. And I'm trying to think about how we clean this up in a way that's mutually beneficial. And that sucks. Like I'm over here going, this is not a fun thing to admit to whoever's listening to this podcast. And like you said, I made mistakes. And the red flag is not that you don't deliver on what you promised. The red flag is when you don't acknowledge that you didn't deliver on what you promised, when you gaslight people into saying, I never really promised that, or that wasn't something that was fully like you misunderstood, or when you like damsel and you're like, I'm so sorry that I didn't promise this to you and I like just can't do it. I'm falling apart. The business fell apart. I'm so sorry, but this just isn't going to happen. And then the person you just let down is comforting you.
That's yes. Yes.
I just got like really heated about that. But I think so many people are afraid to make mistakes in business. They're afraid to let people down. That is not the red flag. You disappointing people, making a mistake, not following through on something for whatever reason, that is not the red flag. The red flag is when you can't fucking own it.
Yeah. Actually, that is a beautiful segue into a thought I had. One of the things I've noticed in other mentorship spaces is if you are not allowed to be curious, major red flag. If you are not allowed to be curious about the advice you're receiving, major red flag. If you ask a question of, "Oh, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not really sure that's right for me, or I'm not sure that applies to my situation," that should be met with, okay, let's explore that.
Yeah.
Not, it'll work. Just try it.
Well,
I always
because
felt like that's the difference between a religion and a cult right there. A religion, it's like you go to, your local priest, and I'm like, "Hold on, I used to love it." I would find a priest, there was a priest that I really liked, and I'd be like, "Hold on, I have 4 or 5 different questions on the faith. Can I just read?" And he's like, "Yeah, sweet." Like, he'd get all excited, wanna, like, go into the things, and I feel like with the cult, you always see the standard, "Just have faith. Trust that I'm the right person or that I know best." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think that's don't ask those questions."
it's pervasive in our society today. And so, of course, it makes it into the coaching industry because it's everywhere. This idea that if somebody is in a position of authority and you question them, you are insulting them. And I have this new saying that I have started saying it a lot, like when I'm offering an opinion that somebody might not agree with, or sometimes like I get intuitive hits about what might be going on with people. And I used to never share those. And I'm like, but those are actually really helpful for people when I share them. What I don't want is to offer an intuitive hit and for them to be like, oh, that's not it, but I can't say that. And so what I've started saying is, okay, I'm picking up on something. I am so happy to be wrong. So let me say this to you. And then can you reflect back what pieces feel like they fit and what pieces feel like they don't? And what's so funny is sometimes I'll say things to people and they're like, no, I don't think that's it because, and they'll start going through it and they're like, and halfway through they start going, oh, maybe that is it.
Right? Like they weren't there yet.
They just
Yeah.
needed a minute to be able, their ego was like, oh, we're not down for that. So they start explaining it, but then they start hearing themselves explaining it and going, wait, I'm defending something I don't believe. And that's not every time. I've actually had clients where I'll be like, I'm sensing some frustration. And they'll be like, and these are my ones that are already really tapped into their feelings. They're like, "Oh, no, hold on." And they'll wiggle around and they'll close their eyes and they're like, "No, it's not frustration. It's confusion." They are using my reflection as data to then input into their system and go, "Is this accurate?" And then the system goes, "No, it's not quite that. It's this." That is what a mentor should teach you how to do or should foster, is that what they are sharing with you, it's not about if it's right or wrong. What they are sharing with you is data for you to take in and be able to sort through and then come back out with an answer of, okay, this is what I'm this is my reflection based off what you just shared or what you just suggested. And I think this actually goes back to childhood for a lot of us. Like, a lot of us never had the experience to be able to have our parents or a caregiver say something or a teacher say something and be like, "Hey, so I don't get that." Or like, and that is really hard. It's really hard to have never received that as a child to be able to question and then now be in a position of authority and have somebody questioning you. You're like, "Wait, I get questioned from the top, I get questioned from the bottom. Who do I get to question? I don't get to question anybody."
That's a microcosm for breaking generational trauma too. I like
It is.
I try not to traumatize my children, but then at the same time, nobody's here being like, "Hey, Brittany, let's do this for you."
And that brings me to, I think, the final point that I wanted to pull out is some coaches, mentors, people teaching business, human. They do just enough work to be able to manipulate their souls even better.
Yes.
And then what happens when you do just enough work to be able to invalidate your soul even better is you then externalize that invalidation to everybody else. And this is why when people say that they're like a trauma informed or trauma sensitive business coach, my very first question is how? And I don't mean where did you study? I don't mean how many hours certification did you take? How do you embody that? What do you do?
Yeah. And again, that's curiosity. I
Right.
tell me.
Right.
Oh, I'm not grilling you. Just tell me.
Right. And do you know how many people, if they're like, I'm a certified coach and I have all this experience over, or if they're like, I'm the person to help you with this. And you go, okay, how? They're like, oh my gosh, did you not read my sales page? Did you not? They get so offended that you asked. And so it comes back to that curiosity piece. And if you have done enough work to convince yourself that the way you see the world is right, and you're not willing to go beyond that, then please only coach people who want that. Please only invite in people into your business programs and spaces who want a guru.
And being clear on like, this is how I operate and this is how my space looks.
I respect the heck out of someone so much more who clearly says, in this space, you don't get to question me. In this space, this is how we do things. In this space, at least I know what I'm getting when I come in. And if that feels really good to me for the state that I'm in my life, great. But don't tell me that you're going to help me build a business that I love. Don't tell me you're going to help me build a business that works for me and my family. Don't tell me those things. And then, especially if you have a very different life than I do, like you don't have kids or you don't have the other things I've got going on in my life. And you tell me you're going to help me build a business that I love. And then I get in there and it's your way. We've got a problem because you can work whenever you want. I have 3 minions who for years didn't even let me go to the bathroom by myself, let alone work for 45 minutes.
There's another piece of that I think now that I've experienced so much. I would love to go back and tell younger Brittany, when you're seeing posts or receiving emails or whatever it might be that seem to not make sense, right? Okay, they're saying this, but then I see them doing this and it just doesn't match. You can be curious about. You don't have to feel like you're judging someone. You can be curious about, okay, is this person doing what they say they're doing? And one a big piece that I've seen is that you also want to be able to see that what they are doing has worked for them for longer than a week. Or, okay, so let me back up here. I've noticed in the coaching space a lot of people regurgitating information that quote unquote should work for you. And so you might be receiving mentorship from somebody who just read a book and now they're coaching you on the contents of that book, but they have not actually applied it to their life for a long. One, they may not have applied it at all. And two, they may have only applied it for a short length of time. And so there's really, mentorship on that. I'm going to go to the person that wrote the book because I want to see what didn't work and what is like, you know what I'm saying? I want to know, I want to see the deep. I like, give me the real life application of what you're telling me because I've noticed a lot of regurgitating information and saying, this is going to work for you when there's really no data saying that it's worked for anyone.
So we it's fascinating because one of the things that we always say in our programs is that you're going to get what you need, not what you want necessarily. And so at the end of our programs, if somebody says, I didn't get what I needed or what I wanted, or if they say, I got what I wanted, but I didn't get what I needed, okay, we got to clean it up. We got to make that right. We have had people in our programs, our business programs for like 1, 2+ years who are still at what some people would look at as the beginner's phase of a business. And if you just looked at that on the surface level, people would be like, you don't know how to then teach people how to create businesses, or you don't know how to help people have successful businesses because look, like a good percentage of your people are still getting started. I'm like, yes. And do you want to know what they've been doing this entire time? Slowing down enough to get clear. Some people need a freaking year. Oh, what if you need 2? What if you need 5? Right? What if it took you 5 years to slow down and connect back in with your ego and your soul and really understand yourself well enough to then be able to grow a business? What if you hid for 5 straight years and then also while you were hiding, did some healing? Let that wound scab up and scar over. And then at year 5, come out and crush it. Or maybe you don't even come out and crush it at 5 years. Maybe you give yourself enough time to be like, you know what? I don't think I want to do this. I don't think that this is the right thing for me. What's just happened? I let myself explore the idea in an intentional, aligned way. And I know that I did it in a way that worked for me. And so the fact that it didn't work, I feel so clear. And it's so simple to go, yeah, I'm done. And there are some people that's terrifying. What if I put in 3 solid years of work or 5 solid years of work and then I realize this isn't what I want? Okay, I don't know about you, but to me, that's better than wondering in the back of my mind my entire life if that's something I should have done or not. And staying at this breakneck speed of trying to create a business that isn't exactly what I want. We have seen countless examples of people making multiple 6, 7, 8-figure businesses over the last year go, fuck it, I'm out. Because they went too fast. They didn't set their values. They didn't embody their values in their business. They went at this like insane speed. And then they did that for 3 to 5 years and went, "Oh gosh, I don't want this." So I would rather, and I probably just talked a lot of people out of Healing Center Business School, and that's fine. But I would rather you come in to our business programs and take extra time. I would rather you get frustrated by the fact that you're quote unquote not moving, except you are. It's just you're not moving in a way you're traditionally used to moving. I would rather see people do that every day, all day, every day, than have you come in and go, okay, how do I help you make back your investment as fast as possible so that you feel like this was a good choice that you made? How can I help you start a business as quickly as possible? Y'all, if we did that as an institute, we would be out of alignment with every single one of our values.
Amen.
So the very fact that you're on this podcast, right? You've worked at the institute, you've worked with us. I won't say you've worked with us, you've supported us for years at this point.
Yeah. We're going on 4 years.
Yeah. And the idea that, can you imagine if we had said, oh, by the way, we need you to have a successful business. We need you to not be in hiding. We need you to not heal from all the shit you just went through.
No pressure.
Right. It's beneficial for us to have you have a successful business so that we can show people that we teach people this. No, what my intention has been, at least, has been to offer you a space to learn, to figure out and discern what is the right next move for me. And of course, I think it's such a beautiful synchronicity that right around the time that you're like, I think I'm maybe ready to talk about this. Maybe I'm ready to like start moving. I'm like, hey, Brittany, I can't find your shit.
And I told my husband, I was like, Lee called me in and said, I can't find your business. Where are you? I was like, one, it felt good to know that somebody noticed my absence.
Yeah.
But also, I was like, this was just this little invitation that felt so safe to start to show up. It's like, hey, you're like, I recognize you're not here. Let's get curious about why. How are we going to move forward? Like,
Yeah.
it felt so safe. And then it creating that safety for people is so important. And so if you're working with someone that doesn't make you feel safe to explore your own thoughts and feelings or to even feel,
Yeah.
that's not healing.
And if you had come back and said, you know what, I don't think I want to do this anymore, I would have been like, okay, do you want help like talking it through or sorting it through? And if you were like, no, I know this is what the right decision is, or if you were like, yeah, and then we talked it through and you're like, I don't think I want this, I would have said to you, okay, great. Then can we deactivate the Facebook page? Can we clear that out for you so that it's not hanging over your head and you see it every now and then and have that wince moment where you're like, oh, can we let it go? And
It felt safe to explore that with you.
thank you. And I believe that, I think the dog's getting in the trash. It's fine. Um, I believe that the business that you are going to have this fresh start from now is going to benefit so much from everything you just went through. Because now, when your brain starts to go, like, maybe I want to charge this price, I don't, or oh, I want to put this offer out, but I don't, you have a really clear understanding of, okay, let me run this offer, let me run this price, let me run working with this client through my values. Let me check in. Is this leading me to try to speed up instead of slow down and be intentional? Is this leading me to do something that I told myself I'd never do? It makes it so much simpler to go, okay, my ego's talking to me and telling me this is really scary. And also my soul's like, but this is simple because you run it through this stuff. And then if it's a yes, your ego can talk all at once while we do it.
I feel like so much of my experience was teaching me how to run a business from traditional structures, like business structures, right? And I deeply care about the human experience. I want people to feel seen. I want them to feel heard. I want them to be curious about what they perceive their negative attributes or whatever. I want people to heal. I was receiving mentorship about running a business in a way that was not going to feel like that for my people. And I finally had the realization of when I go into someone's home to help them simplify their space, we do everything from a lens of curiosity. You don't want to throw it away. I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to do or don't feel ready to do, because just because you're not ready to do it right now doesn't mean you're not going to be ready to do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I want to embody the value of allowing people to do things on their own timeline and to do things that feel healing, not rushed, not this is how it's done and this is how everybody has to live because it's a one size fits all. This is right for everybody. I want people to explore their own individual needs, their household needs, the needs of their family, and come up with solutions for themselves that feel good. I want to preach to them, hey, you have to do it this way. This is what's going to work for you. And I was setting up a business that someone was saying, this is how you have to do it. It doesn't make sense. I didn't want to serve my clients in a way that didn't feel right. And it took me what feels, this is shamey, but what popped in my brain is it took me way too long to figure that out. So I'm going to stop shaming myself about it. And it took what felt like a really long time to figure that out. But now, having experienced having experienced the opportunity to look at my life and my business as a whole entity and to look at how I want to set things up so things feel really good in the long run and things feel very mutually beneficial for myself and my clients. Once I had the opportunity and it felt safe to look at that from a lens of curiosity versus judgment, then I was able to say, okay, these thoughts that had been niggling around in my brain telling me that something is off, the little thoughts, there was something to that. And it finally felt safe to explore it. So
Yeah.
I really am saying this just to say to people that, like, it's okay to honor your thoughts, just like what you were saying earlier, whether it be your soul or your ego, it's still data. And we can explore that. And just because you're exploring it doesn't mean you're committing to anything.
So I want to cap this with a story, and I'm excited to hear TLC talk about this too, because we haven't set the date for it yet, and it's coming probably in the next, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. We're gonna have you come into our trauma club space and do a workshop on decluttering and simplifying your space and creating that clarity and the simplicity. So that'll be open to everyone, and it's gonna be hosted in our trauma club space. And it'll be a paid workshop, y'all. Don't like Brittany's getting compensated for this brilliance she's about to drop on all of us.
This
And
isn't an unpaid internship.
this is not an unpaid internship, no. And one that was amazing. Like, I have to laugh about that for a second. The way back when you were still in this, like, cognitive dissonance space of your business, you ran a decluttering challenge, which we actually talk about not doing challenges anymore because a challenge is we have enough challenges in our life. We don't need more challenges. Invitation, experience, workshop, playground, those are all great.
Simplicity invitation is what comes to mind now.
Yeah. An invitation to simplicity, right? To experience
Yeah.
some simplicity or create some simplicity. So I think I paid $10 or $17. I don't remember how much it was, but I hadn't paid for a small thing like that where I was going to participate because I don't typically participate. I'll come in a space, somebody will give me the things. I'm like, great. And I'll just do it all on my own, not talk to anybody. I'm working on this. And for whatever reason, in yours, I was posting, and you were sharing a daily thing, and you shared something that profoundly changed TLC in my life. Because TLC is more of a hang on to it in case I need it human. I am a get rid of it and I'll buy it again if I need it human. And you said we move at the pace of the slowest person. And you didn't mean like slowest in terms of of anything other than from a nervous system perspective, it was very overwhelming for TLC to like get rid of things at that point. And so you said, we don't throw away anything. I don't care if four people want to throw it away and one person wants to keep it, you keep it because you don't get rid of it until everyone in that house, if it belongs to everyone, you don't get rid of it until everyone in that house is in agreement with letting it go. That shifted so much for me, not just in cleaning, because I started looking at all the places where I was hurrying, like trying to speed people up for my own egoic needs. And so TLC, we sold our house a little over a year ago, and that was a big clean out. And I'm curious to hear, I know the answer, but I want Brittany to hear, like, how did that experience go for you when like the before we sold the house, we were in that I was very strive, drive, push, go as fast as possible. And then right before we sold it was when we did that workshop. So like how did the experience during the sale go for you?
Yeah, I think it really changed in terms of I don't think I necessarily understood why it felt as stressful because there was definitely a part in my head that I'm like, yeah, we're moving. Less things we have to move, the easier things are gonna be. So I just need to get over it, what have you. Like maybe even subconsciously. But I think it was one of those things where that being okay, that there were certain things that, that I did want to keep. And it felt so much better feeling like from Lee, like having that understanding that I wasn't just, I don't even know how to put it, like just keeping things just to keep them, if you will, or just, oh, that this is just, it's something we've had for a long time or there's value. I don't think the issue was never how much something necessarily was worth, but also recognizing that there was that worth to me, whether it was worth anything to anybody else or not. And it's, I think Lee recognized that, yeah, okay, this is something that's important to him, whether or not it's important to you, but like not having to move at that super speed. And we had a little bit of time, luckily, like to be able to get stuff moved over as we went. And in the end, I really did get rid of more things that I recognized. That wasn't necessarily the case that I really needed that to begin with. But I almost think that before that point, it was more of like it felt so rushed that I almost went the opposite direction of then I should just keep everything because if we're rushing, I'm gonna get rid of something that I actually care about and then be more upset about it. And it was weird. Once I didn't feel like that was gonna be the case, I definitely was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, what do I actually care about then?" And not just keep it all, keep everything.
So the garage was always a thing for us. The
Mm.
garage in the basement, because you can just throw shit in a garage and then a year later you're like, oh my gosh, how is all of this here? And I actually experienced a lot of shame growing up around like not having things be very tidy. So a lot of times when TLC would keep extra stuff and it wouldn't be super organized, I felt so much dysregulation in that space. And so then a lot of times I would end up externalizing that shame onto him and make him feel awful for having all this stuff when it's not a him thing, it's a me thing. And so I remember something we did cleaning out the garage that felt like I'm almost in tears right now just remembering it. So TLC would start to get overwhelmed and he would go, just get rid of it. I'd ask him a question about something and it was just like decision fatigue and like just too much. There was a lot of emotionality and like sentimentality and all these things. And so I would be showing him stuff and he'd be like, just get rid of it. Never mind. I'm like, but I think he's no, just get rid of it. Anytime he answered in that way, I set it on this one shelf. And at the end of the day, I was like, okay, here are all of the things on the shelf that you said you just get rid of it. And I think you might want to keep it. And you were shaming yourself for wanting to keep it. So I'm just going to leave them here. Whatever you throw away, whatever we don't take with us, we don't take with us. And whatever you take, I'm super cool with that.
You just made me cry. The amount of psychological safety that you just created for your husband is like so beautiful.
But it was also psychological safety for myself. And thank you for that. But what I realized is it is safe for us to have extra stuff if that's what makes him happy. I'm not a bad person for having extra stuff, and he's not a bad person for having extra stuff. And do you wanna know the wildest thing now? We're in this new house that's 1.5 times the size. This man has not brought in barely anything, and in fact, he has organized every single closet, and he knows where everything is, and every now and then, he'll just be like, "Yeah, I wanna tidy this up." It's like the shame is gone, and so he also knows if he, like, quote, unquote, "makes a mess," I'm not gonna freak out the way that I used to. And that feels really good for me too, to know that I'm not gonna, like, shame someone for just making a creative mess. So, I share that story to, number 1, plug your workshop because I think I didn't realize how powerful that could be. And number 2, for anyone listening who this ties straight back to business, right? If you're not sure the offer you wanna create or not yet, and someone's going, "Just decide." You're debating between 2 things, just decide, throw one of them away and do the other, do this one. And you're like, "Okay, I'm just gonna keep both then and also not make any movement on them because I'm afraid that I'm gonna choose the wrong thing, and you didn't give me space and safety to make a choice that made sense for me." Yeah.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I'm like still tearing up. I think part of it is that I'm loving the fact that something I has deeply written your marriage and your whole life. Right? That feels so good to me. And I have a hard time even saying that out loud because I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or something, but this is so beautiful.
But that's you said something before we started recording that you want this episode to have a deep impact, and I said, "And can I share this?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Can you control that?" And you were like, "No." And I was like, "But you can, but there's only one way. There's only one method of control you have over whether or not this is impactful." And you were like, "Oh, like how I show up."
Hmm.
And so I want to extend that out to our listeners too of if you are not making sure you have what you need in order to be able to show up in your brilliance, then it's gonna be really hard to turn the lights back on and put the sign back on the front of the store and put the doorknob on and let people in because it's gonna feel like too much. Okay, so this is like one of our long ass episodes, and part of me wants to apologize for it, and I'm like, "No, this you're welcome. You're welcome we talked for so long." So, Brittany, thank you for joining us. TLC, thank you for always allowing me to share wonderful stories. I
Course.
I appreciate it. And for anyone who's interested in the decluttering workshop, I would say go to institutefortrauma.com and get on our newsletter because we'll be sharing through there so that you'll get the email when that drops. You can also send Brittany a DM and let her know
Absolutely.
if you're like, I don't want to wait for the workshop. How can you help me now? I think the DM is a doorknob for her. So you can do that.
Yes. And if you want to get into my decluttering Facebook group, get in there. And I'm saying that with no shame, right? There probably hasn't been a post in there since March 2024. And I have a lot of beautiful humans in that space that are hungry
Yeah.
for some healing, and I want to give it to them. So,
Okay.
uh,
We're going to share that link then so that people can join it because it sounds like you're ready to put the doorknob back on that, which is great. And so we'll share the Facebook group for now, and then you will announce the decluttering workshop in the Facebook group. So then they'll be able to find it there. So that's a better way. Don't do what I said, do what Brittany said. And then see, but like right there, y'all, you're allowed to change it. Please work with people who aren't like, no, they need to go. Please don't do that unless you like it. So the other way that I want to invite y'all to consider coming in and working with us is Healing Center Business School. If you're like, oh yeah, I have this. We actually joked about the question I asked Brittany at the very beginning before we recorded this is I was like, can we do an episode where you're like, who here has been personally victimized by Regina George from Mean Girls and have that gym conversation of all the things? So if you have been in other places where you've been hurt or harmed or forced to speed up in ways that don't feel good for you, like that Healing Centered Business School will not be that place.
I think it's important too to note that like we showed up today, like you said, not trying to spill the tea, right? Like this is
Yeah.
not judging people in the space because every mentor coach out there who has done harm and has also probably been harmed. And they're going through their own ish. And I fully recognize my mission today was simply to allow people the space to use discernment on what feels right for them and to be aware of, okay, there are some red flags out there that now I can really own as a red flag and not feel like I'm judging someone, right? Like
Yeah.
I can just be curious about the fact, like, is that right for me? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Red flags. And again, check out Girl Boss Red Flags because there's a lot of good stuff on there. And what I love is they don't name names on there either. They talk about experiences. And y'all, if you wanted to figure out who people were, I'm sure you could go do your Google deep dive detective work and do all that. But that's on you, not on us. And the thing is, it's like you just said, hurt people hurt people. So I know that some of the things that I did where I overpromised and underdelivered were from a place of feeling like I needed to promise the moon to people. And now I recognize, no, our work has to be mutually beneficial. And that means that I'm not extending my capacity beyond what is comfortable for me. So that was a lesson I had to learn. That doesn't, the fact that I overpromised and underdelivered doesn't make me a bad person. It
Doesn't even
means
make you a bad mentor.
it doesn't make me a bad mentor. Again, I got to own it and I
Mhm.
got to stop shaming myself around it and I got to figure out what I need to do to shift it. If I consciously decide to continue doing that harm, then yeah, we might want to talk character. But up until the point where someone's like, I know I'm hurting people and I don't care, the red flag is not a character trait. It is a habit that this person has that likely comes from pain that they've experienced or just lack of knowledge. So we get to be kind to people. All right. Until next week, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here with us today, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for
Bye.
having
You.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of our podcast. If you've enjoyed what you just heard and you'd like to dive deeper into trauma and recovery work, come check out Trauma Club, our private membership community. It costs less than a therapy session, feels a lot better than a night out distracting yourself, and is built to be enjoyable for extroverts and introverts alike. You can head to jointraumaclub.com to hop in today and use the code BTIFAN, that's BTI fan, to save 50% off your first month. And if you want to talk to TLC or me directly, we would be stoked to hear from you. You can send us a quick message by heading to the show notes and clicking the Send Us a Text Message button. See you next time.